Welcome back to the Fight Society podcast. I'm Damon Martin. We got a big show today as we gear up for a special Sunday night card. Last UFC card we had was on a Friday. This time it's on a Sunday as the UFC returns to Phoenix with the return of the legend and UFC Hall of Famer BJ Penn. And we're going to talk to BJ in just a few minutes to talk about his fight coming up this weekend with Yair Rodriguez. We're also going to talk, of course, to his opponent, Yair Rodriguez, who faces BJ Penn in the main event. We're also going to talk to an old friend of the podcast, Joe Lauzon, who fights in the co-main event against Marcin Held. Joe was on the show a couple weeks ago when we did the roundtable to kind of close out 2016. He was kind enough to return to talk about his upcoming fight and the co-main event in Phoenix. Before we get to those interviews, and trust me, there's 3 of them, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with me jawing at you, but do want to go over some news and notes from the MMA world over the past couple of days that have been happening. Of course, one of the biggest stories over the last 48 hours, let's say, is news that Mark Hunt has filed a civil lawsuit against the UFC, Brock Lesnar, and Dana White. Now, Mark Hunt has been talking about this for a while, that he was contemplating a lawsuit against the UFC. He's finally filed that in a Nevada court. He's alleging racketeering, corruption, conspiracy. When you read the lawsuit, it reads like a mafia trial. It really does. Like when I read it, I immediately got flashbacks to The Sopranos, thinking this is what they charged Junior Soprano with when the show first started. But he's obviously alleging a lot of things. Now, how well this will go in court, I have no idea. I'm not a lawyer. Don't pretend to be one. Don't even play one on TV. But I don't know. I mean, this is an interesting move, especially considering Mark is scheduled to fight Alistair Overeem at UFC 209 on March 4th in Las Vegas, and that fight is still moving forward. So it's an interesting twist. I mean, listen, he is finally, gone on to file this lawsuit. It's clear that he's not happy with the situation revolving around UFC 200 when Brock Lesnar came in, had the 4-month USADA rule waived against him, didn't have to go through 4 months of drug testing before fighting, ultimately ended up failing a pair of drug tests surrounding the fight. One of the drug tests was pre-fight, which didn't come back until after the fight was over, meaning that, technically if they would have got it back in time, it would have stopped Lesnar from fighting in the first place. It's a weird argument because listen, eliminating cheaters and performance-enhancing drugs from the sport is a big deal, and I don't disagree with Mark in any way, shape, or form, but at the same time, you wonder on the flip side of this, if Brock Lesnar had been tested positive and pulled out of the fight for UFC 200, then nobody gets paid. I mean, I assume they're not going to pay Mark Hunt $700,000 for a fight that doesn't end up happening. So it's a weird situation of how this whole thing went down. And I don't think this is all about a cash grab for Mark Hunt. I think ultimately that's what it's going to end up being, meaning I think they'll do some sort of settlement, potentially settlement in court. I don't know, though. It depends on how hard the UFC and Dana White and Brock Lesnar's attorneys want to fight this. I don't know. This is kind of uncharted territory. We haven't really seen a UFC fighter sue their employer while still under contract for something like this. Now, to me, it was only a matter of time before somebody sued over performance-enhancing drugs in a situation like this, because, listen, you are talking about potential irreparable harm being done to another fighter by a cheater, by somebody that's on performance-enhancing drugs. It was going to happen eventually, but what will come of this? What will happen with Mark Hunt? What is his future in the UFC? I don't know. I don't have a magic crystal ball to tell you how this whole thing is going to play out. I know lawsuits are very tedious matters, meaning this was just filed in court. I believe it was Tuesday, Tuesday. So, this may not see a courtroom for a year and a half. I mean, that's just how these things happen, because you got to go through a whole long list of processes before anyone actually sees the inside of a courtroom. And there's no guarantee we'll ever see the inside of a courtroom. This may just end up being a settlement. Who knows? But it's an interesting move. And again, Mark's still under contract. Mark's still fighting in the UFC. So I'll be at UFC 209. I very much look forward to those media scrums when we get a chance to ask Mark Hunt some questions in front of everybody a few days away from his fight, because I guarantee you this lawsuit is going to steal a lot of the spotlight during his fight week. Also this week, some other news that came out this week, of course. I know a lot of people hate hearing about this rumored fight between Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, but Floyd Mayweather came out today on ESPN and said that if he comes out of retirement, the only fight he's interested in is Conor McGregor. He said he would offer Conor McGregor $15 million plus pay-per-view back end to fight him. Now, a couple of things here. One, Conor's not going to fight for $15 million guaranteed. He gets that in the UFC already, despite what Mayweather claimed, which was, Conor had never made more than like $10 million a fight. That's just false. Now, upfront money, Conor has made up to $3 million that we know about for UFC 202, the fight with Nate Diaz. That fight did 1.5 million pay-per-view buys. Conor made well over $10 million for that fight once it was all said and done. The same thing went for UFC 205 in New York when he fought Eddie Alvarez. A $17.7 million gate, well over $1 million pay-per-view buys once again. And we have no idea what Conor made in disclosed money because that money is not reported by the New York State Athletic Commission, meaning he probably could have made $3 to $3.5 million up front easy, plus the pay-per-view back end, which would again pushed him closer to between 10 and 15 million once it's all said and done. So chances are $15 million is not going to be enough to entice Conor to drop out of the UFC temporarily, train boxing for 6 months or whatever the timeline would be, and then go fight Floyd Mayweather. Even with the back end percentage on pay-per-view would probably push him to being paid, let's just guesstimate at 30 to 40 million, because I guarantee you that pay-per-view would do bonkers numbers. I think it would do at least 3 million pay-per-view buys easy with the two of them fighting each other. But like I said, I don't think that's going to be enough to entice Conor. I think he's going to want guaranteed. Now, he said he wants $100 million up front guaranteed. Of course, $15 million and $100 million, they're pretty far apart on those two sides. $50 million guaranteed plus pay-per-view points? Perhaps. A lot of people have scoffed at this fight happening, and listen, I think it is very much a sideshow. Conor is a mixed martial artist. Floyd Mayweather's a boxer. It would be a really strange fight to put them in there and expect this to be an amazing fight, but it would be interesting. But a lot of people said this is never going to happen. Dana White has said never will happen. I will tell you from the sources I spoke to ahead of the fight with Eddie Alvarez, there were people telling me deadly serious that Conor was gearing up for a fight with Floyd Mayweather after fighting Eddie Alvarez. I heard this from a couple different sources that it was deadly serious, that there was plans and things in motion to get a camp put together for Conor in Las Vegas, to kind of build a camp around him out there, allow him to train and get ready for a guy like Floyd Mayweather, and then have the fight in Vegas. Now, a lot has happened since then, of course, because obviously you had the whole Nevada State Athletic Commission issue with Conor. He's saying now he wouldn't fight in Vegas. Of course, for $100 million guaranteed to fight Floyd Mayweather, I'm quite sure he would change his mind. But that came up, and, of course, Conor ended up winning the title against Eddie Alvarez, and now he's got a baby coming in May. I don't know how much of any of that would change anything, but I know from people very close to Conor around that time, I was told that they were deadly serious about making that fight happen. Now, Floyd seems to be pretty much on board, saying the only way he's going to come out of retirement is to fight Conor McGregor. Listen, I know it's a sideshow, and I know people hate hearing about it, and I know that it seems like, come on, stop talking about it. It's never going to happen. And I was one of those people. A year ago saying, come on now, this is a joke. There's no way. But now I'm not so convinced. There's so much money on the table. The same way I think Ronda Rousey will fight again, because I think her comeback fight after 2 losses, while it will not be as big of a moment because Ronda has now lost 2 fights, there's just too much money on the table for her not to come back and try one more time to kind of, take back that legacy of hers while also making, $3 to $8 to $10 million and walk away on that. With $100 million on the table, or $50 million on the table guaranteed, or $100 million on the table guaranteed, whatever the case may be, it's a lot of money. It's hard for me to believe that Conor would walk away, Floyd would walk away, and that Dana White wouldn't consider it. Money talks. And when you're talking about a fight of this magnitude, which would be the biggest fight in combat sports today, I don't think it would top what Mayweather-Pacquiao did a couple years ago, as god-awful as that fight was. The hype around that fight was huge, and obviously they ended up doing bonkers numbers on pay-per-view. But I think right now, there are no 2 bigger combustible parts you could put together in combat sports that would equal out a bigger payday, a bigger pay-per-view buy than what Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor would do together. And to say that it would never happen, to say that there's 0 chance it would happen is crazy. The fact that Floyd today said that's the only fight he's interested in, that's the only fight he wants to come out of retirement for, and he's talking numbers, even if it's just talk, it's still a conversation. And then Conor comes back at him with a inflammatory message on Twitter referencing CJ Watson, NBA player who was involved with one of Floyd Mayweather's ex-girlfriends and ended up being a domestic violence situation. Conor went right for the jugular with that comment. So to tell me that you're going to put these 2 combustible parts together and say there's 0 chance it's going to happen, I say crazy. Now, a lot of things would have to happen, of course. The UFC would have to sign off on Conor fighting Floyd Mayweather or anybody else outside the UFC. And of course, I think the UFC would want to get a chunk of that pay-per-view because they would have to be a co-promoter on the package along with Mayweather Promotions. So, but again, the UFC has loans to pay. The UFC is now owned by WME IMG. They took out a lot of money to pay for that organization. You're going to tell me that they're going to just scoff at the idea of making an easy, 20 or 30 million or whatever the case may be on pay-per-view and then split that with Conor somehow? You're going to tell me they're just going to turn that down for one fight and they're not even going to have to foot the bill for it? They're not going to have to pay Conor a dime. It's all going to come from the promotion and it's all going to come from the back end on pay-per-view. You're going to tell me that they're not going to at least consider that? Come on. I've always said money talks, and there's so much money on the table with this one. I have a hard time believing that it's at least a possibility. And I've heard from good sources that it was a definite possibility before the Eddie Alvarez fight, meaning after he fought Eddie, that was kind of his next goal, was to fight Floyd. And with all the talk and all the chatter and all the money that's on the table, I just have a hard time believing that there's no chance. Will it happen? I don't know. Is it likely to happen? Still probably not. But I refuse to eliminate the possibility. I refuse to not talk about it because there is a possibility it would happen. All right. With that said, let's get into our interviews today. We're going to kick things off with the UFC Hall of Famer, the legend. He comes back this weekend after more than 2 years away from the sport. BJ Penn is an old friend of mine. First time I met the guy was back in 2006 at Rumble on the Rock when I traveled out there with MMA Weekly to cover the Rumble on the Rock show that BJ's family used to put on. That was the welterweight tournament when Anderson Silva fought Yushin Okami and Carlos Condit knocked out Shiruto Verissimo and Jake Shields fought Dave Manet and Frank Trigg fought Ron Jun. There's the 8 fighters that were in it. It was a phenomenal tournament, phenomenal night in Hawaii, great atmosphere, which is why I've shouted for years that I hope the UFC eventually does a show in Hawaii because the atmosphere and everything in Hawaii was awesome. I loved it out there, and I hope eventually the UFC kind of makes their way to the islands and does a show out there because I think it would be tremendous. But a big part of that, if BJ Penn can win this weekend, maybe he can convince him. Him and Max Holloway co-headlining a show in Hawaii. Big business. But let's talk right now to BJ Penn as he gets ready for Yair Rodriguez this Sunday night on FS1. BJ, what's going on, man? How are you?
Good. Long time no talk.
I know, man. I was actually just talking about you not too long ago. I was talking to somebody about that Rumble on the Rock show back in 2006, man. That's going back a ways, but one of my favorite experiences of my entire life.
Oh, man, that's cool to hear. Right on, Damon.
So how is everything, man? Obviously, the world is excited to see BJ Penn back in action. I can only imagine how excited you must be.
Yep, I'm very excited. Very excited. It's been a great training camp, and very excited about all this.
Yeah. I know, obviously you've been planning a comeback for a while. You've had a couple of hiccups. I mean, how tough was it, dealing with that time of where you were, you were ready to fight and you had to deal with, a couple of different time off kind of things and kind of waiting. I mean, was the waiting game tough or how did you deal with that?
You know what? The waiting game was the best thing that could have happened. I feel much more comfortable going into the fight now with this 1 year backup training. and you know what? I'm very happy it happened. Actually, I'm just sparring a lot. I'm training a lot, training hard, and a fight's a fight. You're never going to be comfortable, but I feel my mind's in the best spot that it could be for now.
Yeah. I know you were working at Jackson's. I saw you doing a little bit of work down at the MMA lab. Where have you spent the majority of your time training for this particular fight?
I stopped by the lab for a little bit to get some work in with Alex, but I was back and forth from Albuquerque to California for the last 6 months, and I usually train about 4 months for a fight. Gotcha.
Now, you're a legend, BJ. You're a Hall of Famer. You've seen everything. You've done it all. You've been there and done that. But what is it that sets Jackson's apart? When you started working with those guys, and was there something in particular that kind of spoke to you about working with that team that made you a better fighter?
You know what? Me and Jackson just clicked right away. Everything he had to teach me was everything that I could absorb, and that's probably why he showed me those particular techniques, and constantly shows me those techniques. But it's just how calm he was, and at that level, I mean, it's just these guys are great martial artists and sports psychologists at that level. That's what it is. And we just clicked right away. And me and Winkle John, everybody, Diego was there, and everybody, we just had a great time. We just have a great time.
Yeah.
I love everybody. Everybody, yeah, awesome guy. And then you got people like John Jones in the gym, and I can ask John, hey, what would you do here? And just an awesome environment.
Yeah. BJ, when I was at your last fight, and I've been in a lot of your fights, of course, but when you decided to retire, it wasn't you had nothing left to prove. You're a legend. You're a 2-weight world champion. You fought. You've done things that no one has ever done and may never do again in the history of the sport or in the future of this sport. But what is the biggest motivating factor? And is there something to prove by coming back? What is the biggest thing to you when you look at this fight and when you look at your return to action?
I know, everybody will always say, you got nothing to prove, and it's true. I do have some accomplishments here and there, but I just, I love the fighting. And at 30, I see a lot of fighters, they go from 20 to 30, and then they're like, at 30, they're like, oh, there's more to life than winning a fight. And for me, at 38, that's all there is winning a fight. Nothing else even matters. I want to tell the kids when they turn 30, I thought the same as you. I thought the same thing you thought. You know what I mean? But at 38, there's nothing else. And it's just, because this is what we do. This is our niche. This is us. This is our identity. And it's not what like people go, oh, you scared or you nervous and it's like, because you see some people like, oh, I'm not scared. I'm not scared to get hurt. I'm not scared to get injured or scared to fight. I'm scared to let anybody down. And then I look at him, I go, then that means you're fucking scared. That's like, you know what I mean? That's the worst part, to let everybody down. But no, that's what I love. I just love all that pressure. I love all that kind of stuff, and I wouldn't give it up for the world. As long as I can do it, I'll be going up there. I know butterflies and everything. It's not always the funnest feeling. Sparring 3 days a week, getting punched in the face at 38 years old might not always be the funnest feeling. But it's better than a lot of other things, and I love it, man. I love it.
I'm curious, BJ. When your entire career, you fought nothing but the best. You've never been a guy to say, "Yeah, give me a warm-up fight," or give me this, this number 10 ranked guy, or any of that kind of stuff. You were coming back. You were going to fight Ricardo Lamas, top 5 guy, former title contender. Yair Rodriguez, a lot of people would say, is the best prospect this division has seen since Conor McGregor. But I'm kind of curious. When you look at your return to action, is it just because you love fighting, or are you doing this with the intent of saying, hey, you know what, I'd like to add that 3rd title to my resume?
100% on both of those. I love fighting, and I want the 3rd title, no doubt about it. That's it. Back when I first ever won the 170-pound title, I knew we were going to go back and get the 155-pound title, but the 145-pound title wasn't even a thought in the mind. We would have had that title already if it was around, But now, just the way things went through, that title came around. These options are coming around towards the later part of my career. But you know what? I think this is a more serious time in my career. Like I said, a lot of people, they get burnt out after a while. And I'm looking, and I'm here to tell them, hey, man, don't get burnt out, man. This is it. This is our life. This is what you're good at. This is what you train all the time, and stick with it, because this is an awesome life.
Yeah. I am kind of curious, BJ, your thoughts on Yair. He is a very young, very exciting fighter. He's had some great performances, but we can't kid ourselves and say that this isn't a much bigger fight for him. He's never fought a guy like you. He's never fought a guy with your experience and your pedigree, but I am kind of curious, what you think about him, what you've seen out of him.
What I think, this is what I think. Because somebody told me, like, a while before the fight before the UFC called me and asked me today, Yair and his manager are trying to push to fight you. They don't think you got it anymore. They saw you training at the gym or whatever at Greg Jackson's when I first got there in January or whatever. And I'll be the first to say I didn't look awesome when I first got there. I wasn't just coming in and being who I am right now while I walk around, while I do this interview. That's 2 different people. But they probably thought, oh, this would be a great win, a big name. So, that definitely gives me motivation to fight that much harder. And, I know he's a good fighter. He's got great stand-up. I'm sure he's a great mixed martial artist. Everybody is at this point. That's what I realized. That's another thing I realized. Just stepping back and looking at the whole game, everybody is a mixed martial artist now, and everybody's pretty good. And I'm sure this guy's pretty good. And we're going to fight. Let's do it, and I'm ready. I'm more than ready, Yair. I'm more than ready.
I love it. I was talking to Joe Lauzon yesterday, and Joe was telling me that he pushed to fight on this card because he wanted to fight with you. He wanted to fight, near you. He loves you, and he was saying, you're his all-time favorite fighter, and I think that goes across the board. There's a lot of people who would say that about you, BJ. But at the same time, you do have something to prove in this fight. You have been gone for a couple of years, and I know you didn't go out the way you wanted to. So what kind of a statement do you want to send to the featherweight division, with this performance? I mean, at the end of the day, it's about a win. That's what matters most. But what kind of a statement do you want to send to Jose Aldo, to Max Holloway, who I'm sure you love, a fellow Hawaiian, or whoever it is? What kind of a statement do you want to send to those featherweights?
No, it's true. I want to go out there, and I want to make them all say, BJ Penn is back. BJ Penn is back, and and that's the game plan. That's the game plan. Right after this, you're going to be saying BJ Penn is back.
I love it. I love it. And I know this is, like I said, this has been a long time coming. This is a main event, back in the spotlight for you, 5-round fight. But I'm kind of curious, BJ, how busy do you want to be this year? I mean, you've never been a guy to shy away from a busy schedule, from a hectic schedule. I mean, you tell me, how much do you want to be, especially after everything you had to do to get back here? How busy do you want to be this year?
2017 is going to be the biggest year in martial arts in the history of the earth. I want to fight as many times as I possibly can this year. That's my game plan.
And my last question, BJ, and this may be, I don't know if it's out, you probably answered this, maybe it's out of left field, I don't know. You're coming back as a featherweight, but is featherweight it for you? Or are you still thinking about, we saw Conor go out there and win 2 titles. Is that out of the realm of possibility for BJ Penn?
You saw what Dana White said the other day in his interview, never say never, right? About anything in the UFC. You know what? We'll get the featherweight belt first, and then let's just see what happens from there. And I'll tell you this right away. I'm not the guy to go out there and say, oh, give me this money fight, give me this money fight. I look at all these guys doing that, and I'm like, why don't you go knock out 100 guys and become the money fight yourself? Fucking pussy. I want to fight this money fight. Hey, why don't you make yourself the money fight? How's about that one? Let's just start there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, you were, I say this all the time, BJ, you were the money fight. You were the first ever lighter weight fighter that was the star. And how did you get there? Because you beat everybody. Because you went out there and tore through the division, right?
That's the only way. That's the only way to do it, Damon.
I love it. BJ, it is always a pleasure. It is always an honor. I'm so excited you're back, man, and I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you. Great talking to you. Been a while.
All right, man. Talk to you soon. Thank
you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Listen, everybody wants to eat healthier. In this day and age of processed foods and fast food and all the different things you can put into your body, everyone is trying to eat a little bit healthier. Get away from the processed food and start cooking at home. Now, if you're like me, I can't cook. Not a very good cook, never have been a very good cook, and generally, when I try to cook, it ends with a call to the fire department. But, thanks to Blue Apron, even I learned how to cook. Blue Apron is a fantastic service that actually sends you everything you need to make a meal in prepackaged portions, so you make just what you want and you're left with nothing else. They give you everything you need, all the ingredients, the spices, the fish, the meat, the veggies, everything you need comes from Blue Apron. It's a phenomenal service. And right now, you can actually check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals for free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/fight. Now that's how amazing the service is. They're willing to give you 3 free meals to check it out. You will love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. So don't wait. Trust me, it's phenomenal. That's blueapron.com/fight. Your first 3 meals for free. Go to blueapron.com/fight. Blue Apron, it's a better way to cook. A big thank you, of course, to the legend BJ Penn. It's interesting with BJ coming back this weekend because he's taking on a guy in Yair Rodriguez, who we're going to talk to in just a couple seconds. And you got to love the stakes, the gravity of this fight. And what I mean by that is really there's no loser in this fight in terms of the future of the UFC's featherweight division, because either Yair Rodriguez continues to kind of stalk his path towards the top 5 with a win over a legend, kind of legitimizes him, even though BJ is not a top 10 guy and hasn't been a top 10 guy, for a long time. I mean, as it was pointed out to me today, BJ Penn hasn't won a fight since 2010. The last fight BJ Penn won was when he knocked out Matt Hughes at UFC 123 in 2010. That's 7 years ago. But that being said, BJ Penn is still one of the biggest names, one of the most legendary names in the sport. He was the first ever superstar of the lighter weight divisions from 170 pounds and below, from below 170 pounds. And for Yair Rodriguez to go out there and beat him would be a huge feather in his cap, and just kind of one of those legendary moments to say he has a win over BJ Penn before he goes on to tackle that top 5 and, faces guys like Cub Swanson and Frankie Edgar and Ricardo Lamas and so on and so forth. On the flip side, if BJ Penn can go out there and look like the BJ Penn of old, and I know that's a tall task for a guy like BJ Penn at 38 to go out there and do that. But that being said, could you imagine the fanfare if BJ Penn could go out there and beat, knock out, destroy, whatever the case may be, a young gun like Yair Rodriguez, 24 years old, all the hype in the world around him. If he could go out there and win this fight in impressive fashion and look like the BJ Penn of old, or even a reinvented BJ Penn of now, imagine how big that would be for that division, because BJ is still a name. BJ is still a draw. You're telling me people wouldn't pay to see BJ fight a guy like Jose Aldo at some point down the road, or a guy like, I know him and Max Holloway are buddies, and I know Max looks up to him as a legend, but still, there's all kinds of potential matchups for BJ Penn at 145 pounds if he can come out and get a big win. Listen, 145 pounds no longer has the star they once had in Conor McGregor. Conor's gone. Conor's not coming back to featherweight. BJ would be a legitimate star to draw people in. So it's interesting to see how this fight plays out, because I don't think there's a loser in terms of the UFC's future when it comes to the featherweight division. Either they crown a new star, potentially the next, Conor McGregor type in Yair Rodriguez, or they get a legend to come back and get a big win and kind of reignite the flame around a guy like BJ Penn, make one last run. He said he wants to make one last run at the featherweight title. Imagine if he goes out there and gets a win here, what we could see in the future from him. So, interesting times. All right. Let's talk to the man who will face BJ Penn this weekend, Yair Rodriguez. Young kid, very talented kid. I'm such a big fan of his. So let's talk right now to Yair as he gets ready for his second main event fight in a row against BJ Penn this Sunday night on FS1.
Good. What about you?
I'm real good. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. I do appreciate it.
No, man, thank you. Thank you for calling me.
Of course. So how is everything? Obviously, fight is just a little over a little over a week away. How is everything, training, getting ready for BJ Penn?
So everything is going well, bro. I feel amazing, I've been training hard, like really, really hard for this training camp. I'm doing well. My mind is in the right place, So I just feel like great for this fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, are you training pretty much exclusively in Chicago?
Yes, I just train here. Actually, for the last 2.5 years, I've been training just up here in Chicago, I just trained the first year in Albuquerque, Greg Jackson Academy, but I always been with Coach Mike Valle, he's always been like my head coach since the beginning, so I just follow him here to Chicago.
Yeah.
Because he moved here.
Gotcha. So let me ask you, Yair, before I ask you about BJ Penn, let me ask you to look back on this, last year for you. You had such a great 2016. You had the knockout over Andre Fili, and then you had your first main event with Alex Caceres. So, how good was this last year for you, and how excited were you when the UFC came calling to offer you BJ Penn?
I was pretty excited, because it's a legend, but for me, it's one fight more, I don't look at this fight as more than other fights. I always look at my fights as a more important fight of my career. So it doesn't matter if it's BJ Penn or it can be whoever. I don't care. Who matters is And he's a great opponent. I respect him a lot, but it doesn't make any difference or any change on my mind.
Yeah. In a weird way, you could have easily gotten a matchup, in the top 10, let's say Ricardo Lamas or somebody else. But in a weird way, it feels like BJ Penn is a bigger fight. I mean, do you get that sense that, even though BJ's not a top 10 guy, this is a bigger spotlight for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he already knows what it takes to be a champion. And not just once. He knows how to be a champion like twice and in 2 different weight classes. So that's just make him like just more interesting kind of a fighter, like Conor McGregor. All these guys don't have 2 belts, so I'm pretty excited to fight him because it's gonna be a really real test for me. So I'm just excited. I'm happy for this boat, and I will surprise you guys. You'll see.
Yeah. I'm curious what you thought of BJ's, one fight at featherweight. I mean, against Frankie Edgar, that's a very, very tough matchup, and I know you can't judge BJ based only on that fight, but I am kind of curious what you thought, of his last performance. I mean, listen, it's been, 2 years since he fought, and, he is coming off a tough loss.
So I think his last fight against Frankie Edgar, I think he was a pretty good match. He was like a little tall, he never fought that way. I never saw him fighting that tall, and Frankie Edgar is a wrestler. I don't know why he was fighting that way. I think that's why he lost that fight, And also, I think it was the first time for him to go to 145, if I'm not wrong. And, sometimes it's just difficult. But now I know he's been training for more than a year in Greg Jackson Academy, which these guys know me pretty well. I meet actually BJ once down in Albuquerque. So it was like before my fight against Andre Fili. I meet him there. We do a little bit of shadow boxing, nothing strong. He didn't know me back then, and now I'm going to fight him. So this is a pretty big deal for me. I used to look his fights. I used to watch all his fights on YouTube and all that stuff, and I used to learn from him. And now I have the opportunity to to fight him. So it's just amazing. This is amazing for me. This is a big shout for me. And I won't disappoint you.
Yeah. I'm curious, Yair, you mentioned, you met him down at Jackson's while you were down there, and he has been training down there. I know he also did some work at the MMA lab with Benson Henderson's team, but I am kind of curious. I mean, what are your thoughts of, your former coaches, kind of helping him out to find a way to beat you? I mean, is that just another part of the challenge of winning this fight?
I mean, I don't really care, It doesn't matter. Training is training. Fighting is fighting. It's two all different things, so I can be training with him all my training camp, and it doesn't gonna make any difference in my fighting game. I'm a different kind of fighter. I can fight whoever I want. I can just box the guys, I can just kick the guys, I can just throw them down and strike them or ground and pound them, or I can submit them. So I don't really care where the fight goes. I will be ready for any situation. And I know this guy knows me pretty well, because, my last coaches, all my teammates, so I'm not just fighting against BJ Penn, I'm fighting against all my teammates, and they used to be my teammates before, So I don't really care. Training is training, fighting is fighting, so I don't care.
Yeah. You had, such a couple of strong performances in your last fight, but I mean, how much do you feel like you've even grown, since that fight with Alex Caceres in August? I mean, that's at this point 4 months ago. I mean, I imagine the training and the work you're doing, you feel like an even better fighter going into this fight with BJ Penn.
Yes, I feel like I'm a better fighter right now. I've been working more on my basic stuff, not doing a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of crazy kicks and stuff. Of course they're gonna be there, but now I have my boxing more solid. I'll be moving faster. I'll be stronger. I've been training. I've been eating healthier. I've been training harder. My mind is in the right place, so I just feel prepared. I feel ready. I can just jump on the cage right now, and I don't care. I feel ready.
Yeah. I'm curious, Yair, none of this plays a factor in the fight, but I am just kind of curious your thoughts on, being a pretty heavy favorite. I don't know the exact odds on this fight, but I know you are a pretty sizable favorite over BJ Penn. I mean, as a fighter, do you take that as a sign of respect, the work that you've put in, that, people are picking you to beat BJ, that they believe you will win this fight?
I mean, I appreciate that from people, but I've been in the underdog too, and it doesn't really matter for me. I can be in the underdog, or I can be, I don't care. It doesn't make any difference for me. This BJ is a real good fighter, and I respect him a lot, like I told you. And I don't care where I'm at. I always gonna be there fighting with my heart and with my all my life. I wanna put my life on the line, like I always do. And I don't really care if I'm like in the odds, up in the odds or underdog. I don't really care.
Yeah, I'm curious, Yair. You got your first main event last year against Alex Caceres. Very impressive performance. But does it feel different, going into this fight with BJ Penn in a main event? I mean, BJ is a legend. He's a Hall of Famer. I mean, is there any extra pressure, feeling on the fighter, or are you excited for this opportunity?
I'm just like I told you. I take every fight like the more important fight of my career, because it's the one who's gonna decide the next fight. Where I gonna be after this fight. So I don't care if I'm fighting the champion already. I don't care. It's just for me, this guy is gonna be the best BJ Penn ever, and I'll go and fight him. So I don't really care about that. I don't look at he's 2 times Hall of Famer. I'm pretty excited because I'm gonna fight him. It's just a fight for me. It's like one more fight for me that put me closer to the belt, and it's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for being the featherweight champion.
Yeah, I am curious about that, Yair. A lot of people have, kind of pegged you as the next, the next big contender at featherweight. We had Conor McGregor came in and, won the title, and obviously he's out of the division now, but it feels like a lot of people have kind of pegged you as the next guy. I mean, do you appreciate that? I mean, do you like, the fact that people are looking at you as, by the end of 2017 as a legit title contender?
Yes, I appreciate that from people, But and I really appreciate that, But I never take the good comments or even the bad comments that people do about me, because guess what? I love people, and I love my fans, but it doesn't make any difference. All their comments, it doesn't make any change on my fight. So I was gonna go there, fight and win, and they keep thinking that about me. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. If you don't, all right, what I can do, I want to show you different, guys.
Yeah. Well, you've shown, some real dynamic, parts of your game, from your striking to your wrestling to your jiu-jitsu. When you look at this matchup with BJ Penn, and this is not, any way offensive to BJ Penn, but do you feel like there's anywhere you can't beat him? Do you feel like you are, better than BJ everywhere if you decide to out-wrestle him or out-strike him or out-jiu-jitsu him? Do you feel like you're better than him everywhere?
I just feel like I'm a good opponent. I don't know if I'm gonna be better than him. I don't know if I'm a better guy than him or better fighter than him. I'll be prepared for this fight, and I will fight him. I cannot say if I'm better than him. That guy is a nice guy. He's been training for a long time. He's a legend. He's 2 times champion, like 2 different weight classes, and I respect him because of that. But that day I'll be fighting him. I will lose all the respect that I have for him.
Yeah, and when you said, when you met him at Jackson's, you guys didn't really get to train together very much?
No, we used to train one day, and he was like, Coach Greg told us, like, hey, guys, just do some technique. We were doing some technique, going from the punches to the takedown. That was it, just simple, real simple, shadow boxing, real simple wrestling technique. We don't do anything hard. And it was good. We never had the chance to get to know each other pretty well. So this just make it interesting. Know your fighter, know your opponent before you're gonna fight him, and then train with him. It's just it's kind of weird, but I like I tell you, I don't care.
Yeah. I know going into this one, Yair, there is going to be a lot of attention on BJ. People curious about him coming back. He coming out of retirement, a lot of that. And I feel like, you do get to, enjoy the fruits of that, because if you go out there and beat BJ Penn in his comeback fight, he's a legend, a Hall of Famer. I mean, I imagine this does a lot for your career to go out there and really dominate, a guy like BJ Penn, assuming, that's the way. I assume you believe you'll dominate him, or you hope you'll dominate him. But I mean, do you believe this will be a big mark for your career to go out there and beat a legend like BJ Penn?
Yeah, I think it's gonna put me in a better place that I am right now. With all the fans, and my career also. It's gonna be my 6th fight. I'm gonna go and fight him hard. Hopefully, I win. You never know what can happen in a fight. You can lose a fight with a punch or a submission. You never know, they can get you. But that's why you prepare yourself every day and train hard, and then put your mind in the right place to that not happen in the fight. And it's what I'm doing right now. So I just gonna go there, fighting with all that I have, and hopefully I win. If I win, this fight is gonna put me in a good position for my title shot.
Yeah. Is that kind of where your mind's at, Yair? Without looking past BJ Penn, that you want to tackle those top 10 guys this year, I imagine.
My mind is using BJ Penn right now. BJ is my next goal. That my next fight is gonna be my next goal. Just if I win this next fight, I can go for the next one again, win the next one. That's the way to get into the title shot. So from now, I'm just looking at BJ Penn as my goal. I gotta go and win this fight, and then I want to start worrying about my next opponents.
Yeah. I'm curious, Yair, you mentioned this earlier. You've been working on your boxing. I know your coach, Mike Valley, is a phenomenal coach. You've been working on the fundamentals, but you have had some very flashy performances. People loved, some of those crazy kicks and some of the things you did, the knockout over Andre Feely, some of the crazy things you've done. Does that change your approach at all when people kind of come to expect that out of you? When they say, man, we can't wait to see, Yair Rodriguez go out there and throw those flying kicks or those crazy moves, or do you have to put all of that out of your mind and just fight your fight, and then those things will happen?
I don't really think about that stuff when I'm fighting. It's just there. It's just out there. If I feel it, I throw it. I just let my body go. You don't even. If you're thinking when you're fighting, then you're fucked. You're totally fucked. You cannot be thinking up there. It's not yours. It's your body not yours. I've been a fighter since I'm born. I'm a fucking warrior. Is what I am. Like I've been training since like 5 years old. Is what people doesn't understand. People think that I'm an upcoming fighter. I have a couple of fights, but I've been fighting all my life. I have hundreds of fights in different kind of areas, like taekwondo, like judo, like kickboxing. Like all these martial arts, I'm born to compete. I'm a competitor. I'm a winner. I'm a champion. That's what I'm at.
I love it. And I know that, like I said, this is a big opportunity for you. And I know BJ has been around. Obviously, I know you expect to be the best BJ Penn in the world. But like I said, I like your chances in this fight, Yair. I think you're going to show a lot of people and send a big statement to the featherweight division with this performance.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it, man. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys like the fight. This is for you guys too. This is a show. I'm here to show you guys who I am. I'm here to show you guys that I'm the next guy. So let's go for the next one and see what happens.
I love it. Well, Yair, I thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. Obviously, safe training the rest of the way and safe travels out to Arizona. And thank you so much for the time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Take care and go bless.
All right. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Talk to you soon, bro. Bye.
Bye-bye. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans proudly supports the Fight Society podcast. When it comes to the big decision of choosing a mortgage lender, it's important to work with someone you can trust who has your best interests in mind. And with Rocket Mortgage, you'll get a transparent online process that gives you the confidence to make an informed decision. Don't waste time searching through stacks of paperwork. With Rocket Mortgage, you can securely share your financial info to get a mortgage approval in minutes. You can even adjust the rate and length of your loan in real time to make sure you get the mortgage solution that's right for you. Whether you're looking to buy a home or refinance your existing mortgage, you can lift the burden of getting a home loan with Rocket Mortgage. So skip the bank, skip the waiting, and go completely online at quickenloans.com/MMA. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030. Yair Rodriguez is such a dynamic young fighter, and you look at all the talent this kid possesses, you just wonder how far he could go and how big of a fight and how big of a win over a guy like BJ Penn would be for him. BJ Penn is held in such high regard because he is a legend. He has put in the work. For all the talk about people being willing to fight anybody at any time, in any place, anywhere, the Donald Cowboy Cerrone attitude of 2016, BJ Penn created that. This is a guy who went up to heavyweight and fought Lyoto freaking Machida. That was a fight he had no business taking, but that's just who BJ Penn was. For all the talk to Conor McGregor, and I believe Conor when he says, when he talks craziness and says, I'll go up and fight welterweight, I'll go up and fight middleweight. Remember that when he was talking about that madness? Now, we all kind of laugh at it now and say, come on, Conor, you're 5'9". You do not need to be fighting, frickin' Luke Rockhold at 6'3", 6'4". You don't need to be fighting, giant monsters like Yoel Romero or Michael Bisping, whoever the case may be. You don't need to be going to middleweight. But BJ Penn was the guy who said, yeah, I'll go to middleweight, I'll go to light heavyweight, I'll go to frickin' heavyweight. And he had no business doing any of those things, but he still did them. Now, did it ultimately cost him a big chunk of his career when he fought at welterweight for so long when he was never truly a welterweight? Despite the fact that he was a welterweight champion, BJ probably lost years off his career in fights against Nick Diaz and fights against Rory McDonald and that fight against George St. Pierre. He probably should have been a lightweight and or a featherweight his entire career, but that's just the kind of attitude that BJ always carried around, and you had to respect that. But I know one person who is excited about BJ Penn coming back this week, and a guy who actually requested to be on this card because BJ Penn was headlining, and that's our next guest, Joe Lauzon, who takes on Marcin Held this Sunday night on FS1. Let's talk to Joe Lauzon. Joe, what's going on?
What's going on?
How's everything?
It's going well. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I appreciate taking time to chat with me as always.
Of course.
I know we did the roundtable a couple weeks ago, and I was like, man, I already took an hour of his time. I hope he doesn't mind giving me 20 more minutes.
It is all good. I get all the time you need.
I appreciate it, man. So how's everything? Obviously, fight is just a little over a week away. Marcin Held in Phoenix, and you're fighting on the same card as your boy BJ Penn, which I'm sure is exciting.
Yeah, I'm pumped about it. I got one last sparring session, and we're good to go.
What did you think about this matchup? I know people like to think of you as a submission guy, but obviously you have a ton of knockouts on your record as well. What did you think of Marcin in this particular matchup?
So I didn't see his first fight with Diego when they fought Diego. It was his first fight in the UFC. So I hadn't seen it. I saw the highlights of it. I saw the guillotine and I saw Diego won, but I didn't actually see the fight. But I knew he was a leg lock guy because there were guys in my gym talking about him, before the fight happened. So I didn't know a ton about him, but I asked Joe Silva, I'm like, what's the deal with this kid? He's like, he's a great grappler. I think it'll be an awesome grappling match. And I was sold right away. I'm like, that sounds good. That sounds fun. I feel like I fought so many guys that are trying to, knock my head off, and we spend so much time about trying to, negate their stand up and just, get the fight down to the ground. It'll be kind of nice to kind of jump in the deep end and just, see how our jiu-jitsu is holding up.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, though, Joe, when I look at Marcin Held, he is a very talented guy, but he is very reliant on his submissions. Now, there's nothing wrong with that when it's working, but as I saw in the Diego Sanchez fight, when he didn't get those submissions, it didn't seem like he had a great plan B. So, do you feel like at the end of the day, you just have more ways to win this fight?
Yeah, I felt like I was like that when I first got in the UFC. I was a submission guy. Like, I didn't have much stand-up. I came in and knocked out Pulver right away, but I still didn't have very good stand-up at that point. It was well-timed. It worked out well, but I really didn't have a whole lot of other stuff. But over time, I really developed a lot of other stuff, and my wrestling got better, my ground and pound got better, my stand-up got better. So I kind of feel like he is like an older version of me a little bit. Like he's like a newer version of me. So we'll see how it all goes down. But I'm excited. I definitely think I have more weapons though. For sure.
Do you look forward to mixing it up with a guy like that though on the ground? I know you kind of pride yourself as one of the best submission fighters of all time, in my opinion. But when you face a guy who is so heavily reliant on his submissions, we look at this. I remember when Damian Maia fought Jake Shields. My first thought was, I can't wait for these guys to go to the ground. And what I thought, and some people criticize that fight, which I don't agree with, but I loved that fight because seeing those guys mix it up on the ground was like a fantasy fight for me. You know what I mean? So is there any part of you that in the back of your head, just a little bit, you're like, yeah, I would like to mix it up with this guy on the ground?
Yeah, I think, fighting smart, which you always try to fight smart, is, we're thinking more so stand-up. We're thinking this guy's a good-for-luck guy, a lot of submissions. Do we really want to go to the ground with him? And on paper, probably not. But like Inner Joe wants to, double leg him right away and just, see, dive for his leg and try to take him out, and so I don't know. It's gonna kind of depend on how it goes. I think the opening, minute of the first round is gonna, decide a lot about what's going on.
Yeah, I like that. I like that phrase, the fight with Inner Joe.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
I'm curious, I said this fight, you're co-headlining with BJ Penn, a guy I know you have a lot of respect for, and obviously you worked with all the way going back to The Ultimate Fighter. What are your thoughts on BJ coming back, and what are you expecting out of him? I know it's been a while. I don't know. You tell me how long it's been since you trained with him. I know you used to go out to Hawaii every now and again, but I am kind of curious your thoughts on BJ coming back.
I'm pumped about it. I'm so excited. When we first agreed to fight Held, it was going to be on a different show. It was going to be like a week later, I think. And I was like, we'll fight him. We'll do that. But I'd love to fight in the same card as BJ. Like, we don't know if we got room for that. We'll see. I'm like, all right, whatever you got to do, you got to do. But I would love to be on the same card as BJ. And then they came back a couple days like, you know what, you get what you wanted. You're going to be on the same card as BJ. So I'm pumped about it. A lot of people have been talking to me about it, saying how, he's in for a really tough fight and how, good Rodriguez is and all this other stuff, But I look back on it and, the guys that BJ's lost to in like a long time, are some freaking killers. Frankie Edgar, and then all champs. All champs are, Rory McDonald, all guys that are much bigger and really, really good. So, I think BJ's a killer. I think BJ's unstoppable. When he has a good camp, he's unstoppable. I think he's out at Jackson's. So I'm pumped to see, how it all shakes out with him. I'm such a huge BJ Penn fan, and I'm pissed that I fight right before him because I'm literally going to be getting checked out with the doctors and all that stuff, win or lose, and doing all the photos and all that stuff while he's fighting. I should have planned this better.
I'm curious, Joe. It's funny because you've got more than 20 fights in the UFC, and I remember your first fight against Jens Pulver, and then you go on to the Ultimate Fighter, and at this point, you're a veteran to the point where a lot of fighters look up to you. A lot of fighters, hold you in such a high regard and say that they would consider you a guy that they looked up to coming up. But where would you put BJ Penn in that pantheon of guys? You've had a lot of great coaches and mentors, but where would you put BJ Penn in terms of your ranks of, like, if I'm making Joe Lauzon's list of favorite fighters?
Dude, he's the top. He's number one. He was the reason I did the Ultimate Fighter. He was, he's the guy. He's the one that really got me into fighting. Great jiu-jitsu, good boxing. Especially the anti-wrestling and all that kind of stuff. But good boxing, good anti-wrestling, great jiu-jitsu. And was always showing up to fight. He was never going out there to try and eke out a decision. He's out there to fight and finish guys, and he's number one. There's not even a close second.
I'm curious, Joe. I'm a big Yair Rodriguez fan. Kid's very exciting. I talked to him this week. He's super excited for this fight, and I love him to death, man. A very, very gracious young kid. But that being said, BJ was kind of the first star of the lighter weight divisions. In your opinion, and people always ask you for your opinion on everything, which leads me to another question in a second, but in your opinion, how big would it be for the featherweight division for BJ to come in and let's just say he wrecks shop? He goes out there and knocks out Yair in the first round. It looks like the old BJ Penn because, Conor's gone from featherweight. We got this whole controversy right now with Aldo and Holloway and some other things. How big would it be for the UFC and for that division if BJ comes out and looks like the old BJ Penn?
It would be exciting, but I think that there's all kind of hurdles and issues there, because, BJ is always, Hawaii first and all that stuff, and Max Holloway's from Hawaii. I'm sure he's not going to want to fight him. And he's teammates with Aldo. They're both Nova Unao. So it kind of screws everything up, I don't really know how it all works out. I'm just excited that he's back. I think, I think that 45 is a better weight class for him. I'm so glad he's not trying to fight at 70 or heavier. So, I'm just excited for it. I try to get caught up too much. I'm excited for BJ Penn, on Sunday night. Yeah. I'm not worried what's going on otherwise.
Yeah. It's funny because every time, one of the reasons I had you on the roundtable a couple weeks ago is because you always have really strong opinions and you're very smart and well-spoken whenever you talk about this. I listened to you on Luke Thomas's show, a buddy of mine, talking about Ronda Rousey. Everyone always loves to ask your opinion on things, Joe, and you're very, obviously you have a lot of great takes on Twitter and your own personal webpage. I'm kind of curious, as a Fox guy, why aren't you doing more analyst work? Is that something you've been interested in or something you would be interested in maybe after fighting is done?
It's definitely something I'd be interested in, because I like that. I like all that kind of stuff. I like thinking about it. I like breaking it down. But I think all those guys live in California. So it's so far, my son's hospital's here in Boston. They couldn't, there's no amount of money they could pay me to get me further, that far away. So, I think I'm super limited as far as that goes. They want all those guys out there, which I get, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe when I'm done fighting, I'll reconsider or something like that. It's something I would definitely think about. But it's I like just being a fighter for now. I like not having to worry about all the other stuff.
Yeah, but you always have such an analytical take. I remember the video you did breaking down the Paul Harris submissions. About holding the submissions too long, and then some of the other things you said. Like I said, I think you would be an asset to the broadcast, because I look at a guy like Dominic Cruz, who I think is amazing at analyzing fights, and Brian Stan, who brings so much to the broadcast. I think you would bring a different level of that, because you are very smart and analytical. I mean, like I said, I remember reposting that Paul Harris thing, and I was like, damn, like, this is something I wouldn't even thought of to do, and this is my job to do that. And I think you would bring an extra level, an extra layer to that even fighters, some of the fighters on the broadcast haven't brought to that yet.
I think it's that computer science brain I got going. You got the fighter side, you get the computer science side. I like breaking down stuff. I like, breaking things down like that. So it just lends itself. And I was thinking, like, after I did the Luke Thomas show, I was thinking I should have done that on my own. I should have done it on my YouTube or something, or my Facebook or something. Just like kind of talking about that, because I have really good ideas about stuff all the time, and I just don't get it out there. Like I'm telling all the guys in my gym. And then, they're like, oh, you were right, talking about predictions or this or that, and like, I'm pretty much always dead on. Occasionally I'm wrong, but I'm pretty much always dead on. And I got to do a better job at getting it out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you did have, I listened to that show, and I did think you had some great advice, when it came to Ronda Rousey, and other fighters as well. I mean, like I said, when fighting is done, I think you're a guy, and I know fighting is not done anytime soon, but I know you're a guy, you have a lot of options, whether you want to be a coach or you want to be an analyst. I mean, that's got to feel good that the work you've put in is being appreciated, and you do have a lot of options. When fighting's done, I don't think you're going to be going anywhere in terms of the public spotlight, whatever you decide to do.
Yeah, I think, someone was asking me in the gym last night if I'll go back to IT. And, like, I definitely don't see myself going back to IT. Like, I'm 100% into this whole MMA stuff. So I'm not going anywhere. But, yeah, I don't think I'll have a shortage of places to go and things to do.
Yeah. Where are you in terms of your career, Joe? I mean, you're still a young guy, but you had a long career because you started fighting so early, obviously. I remember talking to Caro Parisian about that years ago. When you think about that guy's record fighting guys, he's 15 years old. So I'm just kind of curious, like, you've had some big wins. Obviously, you've had a war with Jim Miller. I'll talk about that in a second. But where do you feel like you're at in your career? I mean, when people ask you that question, or I ask you that question, where do you feel like you're at in your career?
I feel like I'm in a good spot. I think that a lot of people think about, I've been in the UFC for 10 years. I've had all these fights, but I think I've had in those 10 years, I've had a couple fights that were, kind of drag them out brawls, and I got beat up a little bit. But a lot of the fights were not like that. A lot of those fights were very short fights where I didn't take any damage. I think I'm much smarter about, training camps and, not, kind of protecting myself and, taking care of my brain and all that other stuff, and maybe my whole body as far as normal injuries go. So I feel good. I mean, I don't feel any more beat up or sore now than I did when I got my first in the UFC at 21. I think I'm better at dealing with injuries. I'm better at taking care of things. So I don't really know. I don't think I'm on the end and on my way out, but I'm obviously not 21 anymore. I'm gonna be old pretty soon by fighting standards. But guys, there's guys like Dan Henderson or these other guys that are much older than me that are still kicking around and still doing well. So I'm not writing myself off just yet.
Yeah. I'm curious, Joe, because you've been a guy, you have been a top 10 lightweight, but you've also been one of those guys that, we just look at as an exciting fighter, and no matter who you fight. And I think this is a credit to the work you put in, that we'll watch you fight. And I had this conversation with Chris Lytle years ago when he retired, and I said, Chris, you never got the chance to fight for a UFC title, but you were always right there, and you're always a guy that everyone would always tune in to watch. You were co-main event, main card, kicking off main cards, because people knew what you were going to bring. And he said, you know what, that's fine. He's like, I didn't fight for a title. I would have loved to fight for a title, but I'm not disappointed with my place in the sport. Where would you say you're at with that, Joe? Because listen, I'll never say never when it comes to title fights. I guarantee you there are people who said Michael Bisping would never be champion, and look where he's at right now. But I mean, if you go down in history as one of the most exciting guys of all time, one of the greatest bonus fighters of all time, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that. I'm 100% okay with that. There's so many guys that their entire success and failure is determined on winning a title and doing this. I think Kenny and Florian had a great career. But he fought for the title a couple times and didn't get it done. But I think he did awesome. I don't think he's hanging his head about it. I'm sure he wishes he had gotten the title one time, but it's just you can't let that be what determines if you're success or failure. I see like sometimes I'll post stuff on Twitter and people will disagree with me. Like, oh, get out of here, you're rubbish. You can't even win a title. And you realize how difficult that is? It's not like that. It's I won a local league football trophy or something like that, or basketball or whatever. It's a really big freaking deal to go and win a title. So, and there are guys that like poor Frank Yeager trying to get a title shot forever. Guys like Khabib trying to get a title shot. Like Tony Ferguson's on like an 8-fight win streak or 9-fight win streak. Like, it's crazy. If they let their success or failure be based on winning a title, they might never get a shot just from politics. And there's so much more to it. So I'm not worried about it. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna have great fights. The UFC's been great to me. I've been able to provide for my family, and I've had a great 10 years so far. Hopefully get a few more years in here, but I've no regrets whatsoever.
Yeah. Do you know how many fighters in this world? There's probably there's at least 1,000. I guarantee you, at least 1,000 fighters out there that would sell their soul to the devil, if you believe in the devil, to have the career you have. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a testament to the work you put in. I guarantee you, there are 1,000 fighters out there that would kill to have the career you've had in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really lucky. I've trained really hard. The quote, I don't know if it's Picasso or something, but it's like everyone loves the work, but no one wants it. No one cares about the work that went into producing the final piece. And that's it. I'm in the gym all the time. I don't post on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff because I don't want to post training footage, right? But I am in the gym all the freaking time. I have every sparring session taped in the last 8 years. And I go back and I watch them, watch them, and all the recent stuff, and just try to pick up stuff. And I'm into it. I'm really into looking at data and figuring things out and getting better and self improvement. So I'm in for the long haul.
Yeah. It's funny, you mentioned earlier, and we talked about this on the roundtable, but I'm going to bring it up now because it is officially done. You mentioned when we talked on the roundtable about your last contract working with Joe Silva and working with Dana White, and you mentioned earlier talking to Joe Silva about Marcin Held. I'm kind of curious, Joe, how are you feeling about your first UFC card without Joe Silva? He's officially retired now.
It's a little weird, we were debating about it. I'm like, I wonder if I can get Joe Silva to come in corner for this fight. It's gonna be weird. I always have one of the best parts about you win a fight is you get the handshake from Joe Silva. It's just I've just been brainwashed into I need to get that handshake from Joe. Because it always comes after a win. So, it's just it's weird. It's a whole new ball game. Everything is different now. So, it's gonna be fun. I texted him though before. And I still had his number. I don't know if he changed it yet, but. I'm like, dude, you better text me. We got to talk about all the upcoming Marvel movies. We got a big year coming up.
You should absolutely ask Joe to corner you. That would be so amazing to see Joe Silva walk out in your corner. I would freak out. That would be amazing.
Especially on a fight that he put together. That was my thing. Maybe. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because, Joe is always one of those behind-the-scenes guys, but as soon as he said he was retiring, I've never heard more of an outpouring of people saying how much they're going to miss and how much they respect it. I don't think people realize how much work Joe Silva actually did.
Dude, I forget who was doing it, but they were saying, they were basically going to put down Joe Silva as, their emergency contact because if they had to call someone and guarantee they were going to pick up, it was Joe. He did so much behind the scenes. He was, on call and immediately available for so many different fighters and, and honestly, he's nonstop dealing with crap. It's always I got hurt, I got to pull it, or I can't do this, or I can't do that, or I want more money. It's he just dealt with people all the time, upset and, I'm definitely going to miss him. He had a tough job.
Yeah. I'm curious, before I get you out of here, Joe, it's funny because I remember when I saw you, I can't remember what fight it was. I think it was Diego Sanchez. I can't remember at this point. But we talked before one of your fights, and I did the preview of the new Star Wars movie, Star Wars Force Awakens. I'm kind of curious. Did you see Rogue One? I know you're a busy guy. You got a family and everything, but did you see Rogue One?
Dude, I saw Rogue One, and I freaking loved it. I love how dark it was with all the Vader stuff. Honestly, the Vader scenes were my absolute favorite, because you go back to the episode 1, 2, and 3, and the highlight for me of all of those is when Anakin is at the Jedi temple with all the little Jedi, and he just turns on his lightsaber. You just know it's just a dark scene, and they didn't show anything, but it's dark, and he's gonna go and hack down those little Jedi. And I felt like you got a taste back of that from Vader. When he's just there and he's just force choking people and sending people flying into walls, and I thought it was awesome. I'm so excited for the coming movies.
Yeah, episode. What's funny is because the last 15 minutes of Rogue One was both sad and amazing. Like, I was on the edge of my seat. I wanted to stand up and chant and cheer, but at the same time, it was heartbreaking. And I was like, man, this is an amazing movie because it brings out all those emotions in one. And like that last 15 minutes were literally some of the best movie moments I've ever watched.
Yeah, it was so good, and I knew going into the movie that the Rogue One guys were not going to get out. I knew that, they were going to, once they set up, how they were on like this planet and there was like this shield and all stuff, I'm like, they're going to beam out the stuff and no one is escaping. And but like my wife was there and she had no idea. I'm like, how did you not know this? I was very upset and she didn't understand. But I was pumped. I thought it was cool too how they had all these like main characters that made you really care about, and they killed everyone.
I thought that was one of the coolest, and I know it sounds terrible to say coolest, but I thought that was one of the bravest moves Star Wars has ever done, because immediately when I saw that movie, my first thought was, I bet you, because I had the same thought going in, but I was like, I bet you they're going to have the droid, K2SO. I was like, I bet you he's going to pop up in episode 8 somehow. Like, they're going to find a way to capitalize financially on this movie and future Star Wars movies. And when they didn't, I was like, wow, that to me was the most impressive part about that movie, because the bottom line is always financial. And the fact that they didn't take that step, the fact that they didn't do that, I was like, I literally wanted to give like a standing ovation to Lucasfilm for doing that.
They learned. Jar Jar Binks will never be repeated. They learned.
So, real quick, my last question, Joe. You'd think it's a fight question, but it's a Star Wars question. I've had this thought ever since I saw Rogue One. What do you think? Because now that Disney's in control and they're doing such an amazing job, would you like to see Lucasfilm go back and remake the prequels in the new way? Because that's what I've been thinking.
100%. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was talking about some of my guys. I would love for them to go back because it's definitely way darker now. Like you would never have like if you go and look at the battle scene with Rogue One versus like the ones from episode 1, 2, and 3. It's not even the same franchise. It's really not. Like it's so different. I would love for them to go back and redo 1, 2, and 3. And like they didn't exist. We know the story. It doesn't matter. But they're going to do it right, and people would watch it. I would go and watch it. You would go and watch it. Everyone would go and watch it.
Oh, yeah. In a second.
I hope they do.
That was my first thought with Rogue One. I was like, this is the prequel we deserved. Like, as Star Wars fans, this is the prequel we deserved. And I'm sorry, George Lucas, but they did a better job. They just did.
And think how awesome they could, they could redo that whole scene with Anakin going and like cutting down all the little kids with the lightsaber. Like they could go super dark with all that stuff. Like I think that movies going darker is way better. Like all the movies, like all the superhero movies that have been a little bit darker, whether it's Batman or whatever else, they've all been a complete knockout. Everything has been good. So I like the darker, grittier stuff.
Yeah, we got a big year coming up. We got Star Wars Episode 8 coming out. We've got a lot of Marvel movies coming out, Guardians of the Galaxy. So yeah, every time we talk, it's like, oh yeah, we got to talk about fighting too, but let's talk about all this nerdy stuff.
Dude, I'm so excited for Guardians too because I think Guardians is like a kind of a newer, product. It wasn't like it's something that's been around forever. I think it was only around for like 5 or 6 years or something before the first one. And I knew nothing going into it, but just like the soundtrack alone was awesome. Like I enjoyed the movie so much. It's weird because when I went to the first one, I had very low expectations because I didn't know anything, but I left like loving the movie. And now it's like for Guardians 2, I don't know. I'm expecting like Little Groot to be like the most badass character ever, but I don't know if it's gonna live up to the hype. I'm hoping it does. I really am. But
I have good expectations. I was at the Comic-Con panel this year in San Diego, and James Gunn, the director. I mean, I have high hopes because he's a real. I really like his work, and I think the sequel's gonna be good. I was with you because I was like, who are these characters? And I read comic books, and I was like, who the hell are these people? And and I loved it. So I'm really looking forward to that. And we got that movie coming out. We got a lot of stuff coming out this year. Then Deadpool next year, which is one of my favorite movies of 2016. So it's a good time to be a nerd.
Yep. Deadpool worries me a little bit too because that was the same thing. It was kind of low budget. Like they knocked it out of the park. You know what I mean? Like I think it could be awesome, but it's just now again high expectations. Are they gonna? I feel like sometimes like when there's higher expectations, more people get involved and kind of try to ruin it a little bit. I'm hoping Deadpool keeps it together.
Yeah, I have enough faith after what they did with Star Wars. Like I said, my faith in humanity has been renewed after Rogue One. As sad as that sounds, it has been renewed.
Yep, 100%. Did you go back and watch the Batman and Superman extended cut?
I did.
Did you like it a lot better?
I liked it a lot better, and I'm still, like, I've watched that movie so many times, just obsessively making myself like it more and more, because the first time I saw it, the ending just caught me, so I was like, this is such a dumb ending to this movie that I could never quite get past it, but the extended version was far better.
Yep, I watched the extended version probably 5 or 6 times now. And I saw obviously I saw the theater version just once, but I hated the theater version. And then I saw the extended cut. I'm like, this is what it's supposed to be. It was just like, well, there's a lot of little things they filled in that made everything make a lot more sense. Yeah, I thought it was much better.
Yeah, Wonder Woman's coming out this year, which looks amazing. Justice League comes out at the end of the year. I mean, this is a good year.
Yeah, Justice League that worries me a little bit, just because there's so many characters. I'm just hoping that they do justice to each one. You know, like it's tough introducing so many characters at once.
Yeah, I'm super excited about Wonder Woman though. I think the trailers for that have looked amazing, and I'm really excited about that.
It's gonna be awesome. It doesn't hurt that she's smoking hot too.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know. I thought Captain America, the first Captain America movie, the first Avenger, that was an underrated movie. I really enjoyed that when they went back to like World War II and everything, and so I'm really excited about Wonder Woman kind of, going back in time a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be good. It'll be really good.
Awesome. Well, Joe, it's always a pleasure, man. Like I said, I'm glad we got some fight talk in around the Nerd Talk, and obviously, best of luck in the fight next Sunday, man. I always appreciate taking the time, and I'm sure we will catch up again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Damon.
All right, talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, later, bud.
Bye. A huge thank you to all of our guests this week, Yair Rodriguez, BJ Penn, and of course Joe Lauzon. They all fight this Sunday night on FS1 as part of a special UFC Fight Night card. Main card kicks off 10 p.m. Eastern on Sunday night. Make sure to check it out on FS1. We'll have full recaps and, of course, all the live tweeting and everything on the UFC on Fox account, so make sure you follow us over there. We'll be back next week. We got a couple more big shows coming up in the next few weeks. We've got, of course, UFC on Fox from Denver. I know we're going to be talking to Valentina Shevchenko. She's going to stop by the show for the first time, which would be very cool to talk to her. She's fighting in the main event against Juliana Pena. We're also going to talk to Donald Cowboy Cerrone. He's going to stop by, and, of course, his opponent, Jorge Masvidal, is coming up as well, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Of course, we're going to roll right in from that into the fight card in February, Super Bowl weekend. Dennis Bermudez against the Korean Zombie, Felice Herrig against Alexa Grasso. I love both of those fights. And then, of course, right after that, we got UFC 208 with Holly Holm taking on Jermaine Duran-Dami for the first ever UFC Women's Featherweight title. We will be welcoming in Holly Holm to the show ahead of her fight as she fights for the 145-pound title. But today, a big thank you to Yair Rodriguez, a big thank you to BJ Penn, and, of course, a big thank you to our old friend Joe Lauzon. We definitely appreciate him coming on. And we'll see you guys next week. Make sure to follow us on iTunes and SoundCloud Fight Society. Follow me on Twitter at Damon Martin. And we'll see you guys next week for more Fight Society podcasts.